Are you ready? I know I'm ready. This is Kevin Johnson of Leverage Consulting, and you've got the next edition of the Resilient Entrepreneur Podcast queued up for you today. So this one is an interesting one, and this one is somewhat of a something I'm sharing in terms of what I do and what I do to help clients, but also something maybe to get you thinking about, well, should we be looking at that too? And so one of the things that I do with clients periodically is I'll go through and we do a fee analysis, or we look at what they're charging relative to what they're delivering and their profitability and things like that. Really, I've got two examples that I want to talk about today, and both of them are two doctor practices. And we went through and took their numbers, or basically their fee codes, and we took everything and we compiled it. And really, you have to go back and ask yourself, am I working too hard for what I provide? When we go through and we do these fee analysis, there sometimes, and I'm talking about doctors, dentist offices, and this really, it could apply to so many different businesses. I work with the service-related industry. So I work with oral surgeons and dentists and really anybody within the dental industry, but I also work with builders, and I work with real estate teams, and I work with, again, different types of businesses within the service-related industry. And oftentimes when it comes to our fees, well, I think when we talk about what we charge relative to what we provide, it becomes a source of discomfort for some. And it's because they think about, well, when I have to tell someone this is what I'm going to charge to do this, it's that moment of truth when you're doing this, when you're having that conversation. And, so that, the fee analysis or adjustment, it's one of those things where we're making a value proposition. We're comparing things relative to the industry and where the client is. And then we have to think about, again, the service level that we're providing. We're thinking about the experience that the customer, the patient gets. And all those things we can somewhat equate it to like a restaurant, because you can go to a truck stop somewhere and find a steak for, I don't know, $11.99, or you can go to a high-end steakhouse somewhere and spend $64 on the Pittsburgh charred ribeye steak, and then of course that's a la carte. Everything else is extra. So the difference in it is somewhat the quality of the steak, but it's also the experience and everything else that you're getting. So I digress a little bit. Let's get back to our regularly scheduled podcast here. And so again, back to the two stories. So I worked on one of these not a little while back, and it was a 2-doctor practice. And essentially we took their fees, took the procedure count for the past year, and then we compared what their total charges were for the year. And then we went back and we said, well, what could it be? And get this, the difference was $465,000. And what I'm talking about here is the difference between what they charged for what they did in the past year was one number. And if we change the fees to reflect what the fees could or should be, then they would have made another $465,000. So when we do this, it's not to say, oh, well, you lost out on this kind of money. No, what this is supposed to do is show what the opportunity is, what they could be doing. And mind you, sometimes we have to be a little bit strategic in how we make those adjustments, because, again, we go back to service, we go back to reputation, we go back to the experience and different things like that. All those things have to be in line. If we're running an hour and a half late every day, we don't want premium fees. So with the second example that I was referencing, we, after going through and again doing that comparison of what they did, how many the procedure count and the charges that they had for the past year compared to what their fees could be, then we came up with a number that the difference or the gap was about $700,000. So again, I want to go back and revisit this for a moment. The difference in what they did and what they could have charged was $700,000. That means technically on paper, we could make another $700,000 and we don't have to lift a finger. We don't have to do one more thing. We do exactly what we did before, but charge appropriately. And as you're listening to this, you might think, well, why is there such a gap? Well, for some, when we look at why their fees are where they are, it could be that we've just not adjusted them in quite a while. So the question really becomes, when we're doing these, why is there such a gap? Why is there such a difference in the fees? And some of it is, well, it's just been a period of time since they've made those adjustments. For some, it's literally been years. I've seen some that they may not have adjusted certain fees for 10 years or more. I've seen some where when they originally uploaded all their fees into a new software system in, 10, 15 years ago, we still use the same fee that we had back then. So it could be something like that where it's just we've not focused on it. Some will go through and they'll do a basic adjustment across the board. And as I say this, I want you to maybe grab your phone, your calculator, and I want you to calculate this for a minute. So let's just say for some, they will go through and they'll just do this flat adjustment. And they'll say, okay, I'm doing 3% across the board. I don't want to do the work. I don't want to go through all the feeds and all the codes and make the necessary adjustments. But they'll just do like an across the board 3%. Well, if for one fee you charge $100, well, okay. So with that, we've charged an extra 3%. So now we're up to $103. Okay, all sounds good, right? We went up by 3%. But let's just say you have another code where you charge $1,300. And for that code, we're going to add 3%. So now it's gone from $1,300 to $1,339. And the question becomes, if you keep doing this every couple of years, that 3% on the big number just continually gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's possible that these fees could get really, really out of line. And conversely, we can then go back and look at the smaller fees, even the ones that maybe there's fees you only charge $40. You add 3% of that, it's not much. And so we could quickly fall out of line and be really low in certain areas. So and that's why it's super important to go back, and this is the third thing, is wanting to really dive in and do the work and figure out, are we in line with the rest of the country? And with this, it does take a little bit of time, a little bit of dedication, but if you go back to the two numbers that I just went through, $465,000 and $700,000 for two different two-doctor practices, I don't know about you, but when I think about the ROI on the time invested to make comprehensive fee adjustments and go through this and figure out exactly where our fees are today and where we need to be and make those adjustments. And the one for $465,000, they didn't make all those fee adjustments at one time. They made some of them, and we were strategic about this, but we made some of those fee adjustments in whole at one time. And then some of those fee adjustments, they were going to be staged out over maybe a year and a half to 2 years. But within 2 years' time, we'd be spot on. And that being said, what we're really trying to do is help the practice be profitable. Because guess what, guys? What's happened in the past year? COVID happened. And as a result of COVID happening, have you noticed what happened to gas prices? Have you noticed what happened to lumber prices? Have you noticed what's happened to supply and demand? There's a lot of things where essentially the price of things have gone up. And because they've gone up for the business, they've also gone up for our team members. And if they've gone up for the team members, guess what? We have to, at some point, they're going to be expecting raises as well. So raises are not an automatic. That's a completely different podcast. But raises are going to be somewhat expected. Not that that's right, but they're going to be expected because the cost of living for the team is going up too. So when we think about this, and then we have equipment we're going to buy equipment, and at some point in time it's going to die. We're going to need to renovate our office. We're going to need to basically reinvest in our business. So as the costs are going up, we have to keep up with, and I'm saying it, we have to keep up with the price or the pace of inflation. So keep that in mind. This is part of the reason why we do the fee adjustments. We all see the gas prices go up and down. We see the price of things at the grocery store go up. We see the price of things at the store go up. So we have to keep up with that as well, because all the costs for your business are going up, which means we have to keep up with that. So if you've not adjusted your fees, and you should be doing it, I would say you need to evaluate, not saying you have to adjust them, but you really should be evaluating your fees annually. If you've not done it in a couple of years, I can almost guarantee they need to be adjusted. So with that said, I would make this something that you are very religious about. It might even be something that you put on the calendar. If you are not 100% sure how this needs to be done, or you want help in doing this, contact me. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to answer questions, because as you learned through my 2 other examples, for some people, it's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And even if it was just, well, if I go through this exercise and make another 10 grand, I don't know about you, but that would be well worth my time. So, as always, I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and any questions, comments, or feedback, please drop them in the comments below or send me a direct message. I'd love to hear from you.